there, Eagles fans, and welcome back to our Eagles Therapy Podcast. My name is Basil.
And I'm Baz.
And we are recording Saturday, March 16th, 2024. You know, Dad, we're going to have to, maybe next offseason, like in the free agency, I'm going to have to come and like move in here for the week or something because
Yeah.
I feel like I'm coming over to record every night. It's hard because, signings happen and I'm already at home and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to drive there to do it. So maybe I'll have to move in here or you'll have to live in my house while we're in free agency.
Just for the week.
Just for the week of free agency so we can, the beginning of it so we can record everything that's happening and get it out quick because we're 3 days behind on some of this stuff, but it's the best we can do.
Well, there's so much happening. I mean,
it is. It's pretty crazy how much is happening. What's your take on what's going on?
Well,
on the whole NFL, really.
It's it's been surprising. I didn't think there'd be as much major movement like there has been.
I feel like we've never seen this before in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for us. I mean, for the Eagles, it's just been a whirlwind. For them to address so many positions so quickly.
Yeah.
And just kind of throw money around like it's growing on trees or something.
Yeah.
But, I'm excited. I think it's good. I mean, there's been some moves that I've been wondering, questioning, but for the most part, I think it's been amazing.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, let's jump into some of the specifics, some of the stuff that's happened since the last time we were here. But as always, we want to give a plug to the club. We are a part of the Philadelphia Eagles Fan Club of Colorado Springs. We watch every single Eagles game at Frankie's on Powers and Galley, and we will be watching the draft there, so come on down. Just the first day of the draft, I believe. I don't think there's plans to watch any others, but the first round of the draft will definitely be there, so come on down, and we'll say hi, and we'd love to see you guys there, and come on down for some wings and some drinks, and we'll have a good time. I think she's doing the nighttime deals.
Yeah.
She's going to be doing them during the draft and stuff, so it's going to be great.
Excellent.
But let's go into it. The first move we got to talk about, a big one that's kind of been controversial across a lot of different Eagles fans, different feelings towards it. We signed Devin White, a former 5th overall pick from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Signed him to a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. He's only 26 years old, kind of known in his career mostly for his blitzing. He had that one season where he had 9 sacks, and I think in his full-time career stats, he's got, 23 sacks in 5 seasons. So, it's pretty darn good. But what's your take on this? What do you think?
It's funny. I've read a lot of comments, and almost 100% of them have been super thrilled that he got him. When I first heard from you that we got him, I was in the same way. I was very excited. There's a few things. You say the $7.5 million from what I've heard, it's significantly less than that. It's just if all the incentives are met. So hopefully all the incentives are met. But, I don't think there's any downside at all to it. He is 26 years old, fast. He's got speed. The only knock might be he's not really a cover guy so much. But, if we just get a fraction of a cover guy this year, that's all we need.
Yeah.
He's got the experience. He could teach some of the younger guys what's happened. He's not breaking our bank at all.
That's the thing for me.
He's kind of glad he got out of Tampa Bay from what I see, so that's always good.
Yeah.
And, we've watched and we've looked at some free agents in the past and through history, and, a lot of times just that change of scenery is huge.
Yeah.
We've seen it not work as well.
We saw Derek Barnett just last year. I mean, that's one example for
it.
Like, that's a small example.
It is a small example for a guy who couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And he got, a few sacks. I think he finished with 2 or 3.
Mac Hollins. Remember when he left the Eagles?
He's still around.
He's still playing, and he's not. I'm not saying
he's not
a Pro Bowler.
Superstar,
but he's been a part of some good teams, and he's been a good receiver. Surprising.
Well, I know this past year there were several. And of course, we follow the Eagles that have left, of course, so we always know who's doing what and things like that. But hey, he had his 60-yard catch, and did you see that catch he made the other day?
Yeah.
So I mean, he's he just. A lot of players don't get the opportunity. Coaches may not like certain players' attitude, things like that.
Yeah.
But, I think it's a great signing. I think it's wonderful. We address the need. It's not maybe over for the draft and all that for the regular season, but it's just you got to get players, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it as well. I think I was when I was on Twitter, it seemed like it was kind of both ways. There were a lot of people against it, saying this wasn't really a fit in the Vic Fangio defense, kind of saying what is this? And then of course, we listened to and read some of the stuff that Reuben Frank was saying, who we're big fans of, who works over at NBC Sports Philadelphia, and he was very down on Devin White.
I was surprised.
And I know he did get benched during the season, but take into effect some of the things. He requested a trade last offseason. He requested a trade. He didn't want to come back. He didn't want to be in Tampa Bay, and he had to play there another year. So that's a huge part. That attitude is a huge part of your performance. He doesn't really want to play there. He doesn't want
Right.
to play with those guys. But I like it. He's a 26-year-old kid. Great blitzer. People think he's kind of washed, and maybe he's not great in coverage, but I can't imagine he can be worse than what we just had, and that's where me and Ruben Frank
Yeah.
disagree completely. He was saying a Zach Cunningham out that could be better, and I'm like, that doesn't even.
Dave shut that down pretty quick.
That is like
he
to
didn't
me.
like that at all.
I don't. Oh my gosh, that was horrible. But yeah, I think it's a good signing. Like I said, it's not expensive, $7.5 million. It's fine, and that's the max. So
Right.
I think it's a really good signing to get a 26-year-old kid who's really experienced.
And it's a 1-year deal, make it or break it. He
Yeah.
might come out and play fantastic, and now we got a guy for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And, you just can't go wrong with that kind of pick. I mean,
And I still think we're going to address linebacker in the draft. I do. I think we're going to get maybe possibly 2 linebackers, definitely 1 in
Yeah.
the second we don't have a third rounder anymore. Oh, we'll talk about that next.
Yeah.
But I think in the second round we'll be addressing a linebacker position.
Right. And I think that'd be the way to go. And I know we've both got a player in our mind that we want, but
Of course.
we don't want to leak it out, let anybody find out. But,
Everybody
there's
knows.
still big linebackers out there, just like there's big safeties out there, but some of the price tags are just too high. And I don't think there's, the thing, of course they talk about Justin Simmons, and Fangio was a coach of his. And, you always like to see that kind of marriage happen, but, you can't control it all. And I mean, we don't want to be paying a guy $20 million a year either. I mean, he is definitely a good player, but make it a 1 year, make it or break it, prove it deal. I agree.
Let's jump over to the next one, the one that I'm not too big of a fan of. I know a lot of people think it was a good move because he could be a good backup. Let's just say his name, Kenny Pickett. Eagles traded for the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. Debatable. He's not really a quarterback. He's more of a, I don't know, guy that throws the ball sometimes. Have you seen his numbers? It's insane.
I do know his numbers, and I don't agree with it. But he's
a former 20th overall pick, so there's definitely
first round pick.
There's definitely talent and potential in him. But we traded a 3rd round and 2 2025 7th round picks for Pickett and a 4th. I don't love it because I really don't like the loss of the 3rd round pick. Now, not a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's only like 22 spots. Like we went down 22 spots, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't. That's 22 guys better than one another.
Well, not just that, Baz. It's also okay. We'll give you the 98th pick, which that was the 98th pick, and we'll throw a 5th in, and we're going to move up in the 2nd round to get that linebacker we want. That's why that number being in 3rd and 4th, that the difference between the rounds makes a big difference.
Yeah. So I don't love the trade. I like the player. I think it's a good idea in the sense of he could be. I think he's a good backup. I think he's a good idea for a backup quarterback. I thought we already had it in Tanner McKee. I was happy with him too.
Yeah, I thought he
so I was a little bummed about that.
Great last year in the preseason. I know it doesn't really count, but he played better than Mariota in the preseason, in my opinion. Of course, better. I'm not a quarterback or coach or anything like that, but I mean, there is some factors to consider. It's very possible that our OC liked him at one point and said, "Hey, let's bring this kid
just
in
case." Yeah.
For I don't think the salary is big.
Well, Pittsburgh's paying him mostly.
So it's under $1 million, I think. So. I mean, I understand that, but like I said, you and I were pretty sold on Tanner McKee.
Yeah.
I mean, this kid looked great last year, and maybe it's competition for him.
Yeah.
In a perfect scenario, I'd love to see McKee be our second stringer.
Yeah.
So maybe that means he's got to put a little, tie his shoes a little tighter and work a little harder in the preseason. That's fine with me.
Yeah. In his career, Kenny Pickett 14-10, so he's won some games. He knows how to win. Got 2 winning seasons and 2 playoff appearances. Of course, he was benched towards the end of last season. In his career, he's thrown 13 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. Yeah. It's freaking insane.
Well, you figure it out.
Can you believe that?
I don't know how many games he started. He's 14-10, but that means he's thrown like 1 touchdown pass a game. Yeah, I mean, that's not acceptable.
His rookie year, he played 13 games, started 12. He threw 7 touchdowns and 9 interceptions.
Okay.
Last year, he started 12. He played 12, and he threw 6 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Can you imagine throwing 6 touchdowns in 12 games?
Yeah, we had a quarter-back throw 7 in one game, I think, there one time. So,
Big Ben was throwing 6 a game one year.
I'm not going to compare, but, he had a decent offensive line. He had a good running back. I don't know how his wide receivers were.
Okay,
but
yeah,
still,
they weren't unbelievable.
And I hate it when they pull out the 14-10 record because Pittsburgh wins with defense.
Yeah,
and has
many
in the last
times.
2 years they've been. I don't want to say lucky, but I watched a lot of them last year, and they were not a very good team at all. So
not at all.
I mean, I understand them saying, "Let's get rid of this kid."
Them going into the playoffs was one of those things where you're like, "All right, this is where the 7 playoff teams doesn't really, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was,
It doesn't really work.
especially in the record.
Of course, then Green Bay beat Dallas, so I guess the 7th
No,
seed's a big deal.
and that's the thing. Get into the dance, but I mean, it was just I just didn't think he was any good. I know we played him 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, destroyed him.
And I mean, it's one of those games where you just
seven
kind of,
times. Yeah.
you know, I don't know what this final score was, but it definitely was a yawner, if you will. You know, I mean, we kind of knew going in. You never want to have that situation, but we kind of were not fearful at all of the guy. And I know sometimes they rush those rookies, which is kind of a bad thing. And, you know, I used to tell you the stories of in the old days, a rookie quarterback, I don't care if he was 10th overall, he sat for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was a bad move, like we did Wentz, and he came out firing on all cylinders. But, you know, I've seen so many of those quarterbacks sit sometimes too long, sometimes not enough. But maybe that's Kenny
Pickett or Kellen Moore. Yeah.
Kellen Moore. Maybe that's his thinking. Hey, this guy didn't get really much of a chance in Pittsburgh, and let's show what he's got. But really, I mean, we want Hurts to be our quarterback for the next 8 years. So
it doesn't matter who the
backup
is.
Maybe it gets us a pick next year if we can turn him into a decent quarterback.
I mean, it's not it's not a bad idea to think, you know, in 7 months when we're at in 7 months when we're at the season,
right?
And it's someone, and you know, 2 or 3 starting quarterbacks have gotten hurt around the league. And now their backup is Taylor Heineke or Desmond Ridder.
Right.
And they're like, oh, we need another quarterback.
Yeah.
Well, then they look over and they see Kenny Pickett, who's riding the bench in Philly.
Right.
And he's won games before. Maybe it's a team that just needs to get through a few games.
Yeah.
Maybe they give us a 3rd rounder for him.
It's true.
It's better than this.
I mean,
I
get
don't know.
it.
I don't love losing a 3rd rounder, but the trade's good. It is, but I just don't love the loss of a few picks.
I mean, the trade's good if he turns out to be somewhat of a player, but he's
also we beat him 35-13 that time.
Okay, I do know we beat him pretty good.
We sacked him
the
like
AJ Brown game.
We sacked him 6 or 7 times. It was pretty brutal.
But
awesome.
I mean, you know, the one thing is you look at him and you say, okay, they gave up on a guy. I think he was the first quarterback drafted that year in that draft.
Yes, he was.
But I mean, you know, I don't know. He's got all the tangibles. You know, the size, his strength,
he can run,
speed.
You know,
but it just, I don't know.
Maybe that's the big thing. Tanner McKee can't run. He's stone-footed. Maybe they want a guy as a backup who can run around.
Okay.
Maybe that was the idea of Mariota. I don't know.
Right.
That's
and I agreed with Mariota was only $5 million. So now it's, we saved $4 million by getting this guy. And I know we got McKee for another two years after this year. So, you know, I mean, that's the thing. You know, you always want to have that backup that can come in and actually win.
Yes.
You know, not just be a stand behind and ground the ball. But, I mean, hopefully he turns out to be okay. But
let's move on to some retainer, a big thing that we did yesterday. Yesterday? Yeah, I think yesterday. Josh Sweat staying on a restructured deal.
Sweaty.
Yeah, that's right, man. Great to have him back. One of the best sack dances in the modern day NFL. Of course, because of his name.
Yes.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Such a perfect celebration. Staying on on a restructured deal, coming back still for a year. He was still signed, so it's not an extension.
Right.
But he's coming back this year, playing on a $13 million deal as the max. $10 million is guaranteed.
Right.
So it is less than his original deal, but it's more guaranteed money.
Well, plus, you know, we never. It wasn't like he was a terrible player. I mean, you know, he just, like the rest of the team, just kind of didn't do much in the last half of the season. I think he had no sacks after week 8 or 9 last week.
He had a sack in the postseason, I know, but in the regular season, yes.
He just went quiet. And, you know, some of us had set some high standards. I had said earlier in the season.
Oh, yeah.
I was looking for 12 or 13 sacks to improve on the 11 that he got the year before. But, you know, it just didn't happen. He did finish with 7.5. Right?
It was 6.5.
6.5.
One in the postseason, so yes.
All right. Well, still
on the season.
6.5. I mean, I was looking for double that in the regular season.
Me too.
And 2 or 3 in the playoffs. So I mean, it just didn't happen. You know, but you know how sacks are. They do come in waves. You know, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. You're 2 steps behind. Look at Brandon Graham all those years.
Oh God,
he was so close to getting sacks and just missed them.
There was times where he was the best defensive end in the league, but he couldn't earn the title.
I mean, you don't have the numbers.
The sack numbers.
It's the way it works. And so hopefully he's there. He's still young. He's still got, you know. And the good thing is, and the fans should know this, that he came back. He wanted to come back.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he said, "Oh, I can't get anywhere. I can't play anywhere else. I want to come back. I like what we have here." And you know, we love those kind of players that come back and say, "I want to play for Philly." You know, I can handle the fans. They don't scare me. They don't run me off.
Yeah.
You know, so hopefully he's can deliver again this year, and you know, then maybe we can extend him next year. You know, he's still fairly young.
Absolutely.
And we were saying earlier he's got 35 sacks in 5 seasons, I believe. So,
7 a year.
let's hope.
Oh, 6 seasons.
But didn't he get hurt one
But
year?
well, his rookie year, he only played 9 games.
Yeah,
and he didn't have any sacks. So, it's
So,
kind of
we're still looking at about a 7 average on his
Yeah.
5 years, 35. So,
Okay.
on the other 10 sacks, man, he's pushing 50.
So next we got Sua Opeta. He went off to Tampa Bay, signing a 1-year deal there. So that's another, add that to one of our departures. And then Jack Stoll, our number 2 tight end, going off to the New York Giants on a 1-year deal. I don't know if they've released even if it's a 1-year deal. Tough to see both those guys go. They haven't been full-time starters, of course. Jack Stoll when Goddard was out and Opeta when Cam Jurgens was out, so they haven't been full-time starters, but they've come in and helped a lot of different times because of injuries, so they've been really big for us. So it will be a bummer to lose because we're losing some good depth. What do you think this has an impact on in terms of draft?
Well, as far as tight end goes, you know how I feel about that. He had 5 catches his whole career with us, so he was more of a blocking tight end. I know we can get another guy, young guy, undrafted free agent, and teach him how to do that. So, but Opeta's a little bit more. That hurts a little bit more. He's been around for years.
Yes.
He knows the guys around him, the guys he's played with. With Johnson, and he can fit in there and has played well. I mean, there was one year he played really well. So
yeah, he's been with us since 19.
Yeah, so that's 5 years or 4 years. So
and when he was at the NFL scouting combine, he put up the most reps of all offensive linemen with the bench press.
Right.
39 reps of 225 pounds. So he had the best bench press or the most of all the offensive linemen that year. That's kind of a cool little fact I didn't know too much about. But yeah,
and that's good. It just shows you he's been improved. I know he had some bad games here and there, but last year he was fairly solid.
I don't think he even had bad games. He just wasn't, he wasn't an all-star.
That's the thing.
But I never remember going,
Opeta,
oh
my gosh.
He was a good, solid offensive lineman, a good backup at both guard positions.
Yes, and it's good when you don't hear his name. That tells you something. He didn't
get
burned on that sack.
Unless they're saying, oh my God, Jason Kelsey's the best center in the league. And then it's okay to hear his name.
But oh no, that's, so that's like, you don't want to lose a player like that because that's depth and things like that. So hopefully he does well on his way out. And, he's played hard for us. And
I think one of our second-round picks is going to be a offensive lineman and the other one a linebacker. And then I think our 4th or 5th will be now we're going to have another 4th. I think 4th or 5th will be offensive lineman.
I'd like to see him get a tackle/guard, not a guard/tackle. So if that makes any sense to you. We want a tackle who can play guard. Yeah, because we're going to need down the road to, for Johnson.
Well, I really think next year is going to be the year we draft an offensive line. I think we're going to draft a right tackle in our first pick.
Gotcha.
Unless something disastrous happens. Gotcha. But I think we're going to draft an offensive lineman in the first pick of next year's draft to replace
Johnson. That makes sense. Go high.
Because I think Lane is about to enter his second to last year, in my thoughts. I think he's going to play this year, play next year, and then I think – depending on the situation, things can always change. I think he's going to only play 2 more years. So I think next year we will be drafting his replacement the year before he retires.
Yeah, because he did have the injury last season.
Yeah,
and that that hurt him for a while. He came back and played fantastic like he always does. But these guys get up there. That's what happens. And then when your buddies start to retire, that makes it even harder.
Now here's where the draft picks are looking around right now. We got the first rounder, 2 seconds. A 4th and 3/5, and then a 6th. We don't have our 7th anymore. But I think that's pretty darn good. That's still, what was that, 8 picks? Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right.
That's better than normal.
Because, I remember one time you and I talked about, we got 12 picks. Yes.
And then
it doesn't
it turns into 7 or 6.
You can't do that, and especially if you're
it's impossible, like we've said before.
Right.
You can't, 8 guys, we're going to trade something because there's no way 8 guys can fit on this team. We don't have room for that. That's not physically possible.
And that's the one thing about it. If you're an upper echelon team, which, we haven't been the greatest team, but we're in the top 10 or 12, whatever, of the league. So you don't have 20 positions to fill.
True.
You do want to be able to fill it right. And every year, of course, that draft pick is very important.
Yeah.
Now, the first overall is a 22.
Yes.
I don't know if you think about maybe a sliding up. I hope not.
I don't think so.
That's one thing I don't like, and Howie's the master at that. But I don't like us moving up.
It depends.
It depends who we get and how they played.
So for me, the big thing was always, if you won the Super Bowl the year before, you're the 32nd pick or the 31st if someone got cut out. If you're the 32nd pick, I'm a big believer in you trade back. I've always really believed that. You don't make your pick at 32nd. Now, there's situations that can change.
Right.
Kansas City needs a wide receiver.
Sure.
So they're going to take a wide receiver at 32.
Yeah.
So but like I always said, like back in 17 when we won, in the 18 draft, I didn't want to draft anybody. I was like, move back and gather some picks for next year.
Right.
Get someone's next year's second pick.
Right.
And get someone's second pick this year. So we'll have 2 picks in the second round this year and 1 next year. We don't need that first round.
And hopefully
pick.
that team that you trade with is a
Yes.
bottom 10 team, so you can get in the top 10 or
That's
15th pick.
Now,
it's worked for us before.
Yes. Now, what we did in 2017, it's kind of funny, or 2018, the draft, it was kind of funny because we traded back our 32nd pick. We were 32nd, and we traded it. We didn't want to.
We got out of the first round.
And they drafted Lamar Jackson. Baltimore drafted Lamar Jackson. And it's funny because people always say, oh, all these 31 teams passed on Lamar. And I'm like, no, we didn't. We had a quarterback. We didn't pass on. I hate when they do that narrative.
Right. Now I know.
None of these teams looked at him, and I'm like, okay, well, we didn't need a defensive end. Like,
right.
We didn't want one.
Right.
Like, we have an all-star at defensive end. I didn't need one.
Right.
So that always bothers me.
Now, what did we get for that first round pick?
Oh,
that's the thing. That's that's all right. It's too much work.
I'd have to find out.
But you know what I'm saying.
It's a good point.
The only good thing about drafting somebody in the first round, regardless of what number they are in that first round, is you get the 5-year deal.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So if we had drafted, say, let's just take a flyer on this guard or center, Dickinson or Dickerson, whatever. And then, we got that extra year of salary. But the thing about that is if the player's damn good, like they should be in the first round, that blows your socks off, you should be extending him 2 or 3 years into it anyway, right? So that 5th year doesn't really come into play. Yeah.
See, this is a perfect trade. I just looked up the Philadelphia-Baltimore one. We traded our 1st and 4th round selections of that year, 32nd and 132nd, to Baltimore in exchange for their 2nd, their 4th, and their 2nd the next year. That's great.
Yeah.
So we traded back a 1st and a 4th, and we got back a 2nd, a 4th, and the next year's 2nd.
Right.
So to me, that's a great trade. Now, of course, with Baltimore is another
being
team
a good team.
They are top.
It's a little different.
Top 10 all the time. You want to try to maybe get it a Cleveland or a Jacksonville or something like that.
No, definitely.
But I think that's a great trade to me, and I think that's a trade. If you're the 32nd or 31st team in the draft and you're kind of set, like the Niners, I imagine them trading back this year, because they don't really need that first round pick. Right. They have everything.
Yeah. And what's the difference? Like if that first round pick is going to be 31st.
31st, yeah.
And if they trade back into the second round and get the 5th, a bad team needs that pick to get the guy they want. They get in the second round 5th pick. It's only 5 picks.
And they might get another second round pick.
Exactly.
And maybe a second round pick for next year.
Right.
Or maybe a second and a third round for next year. That's a big deal.
And that's where the GMs come into play.
People kind of don't really realize it. And I can't remember what the graphic was a few years ago. Remember, it talked about how like a majority of the rosters, I don't remember the percentage, made up of 4th round picks. Like in the NFL, the majority of rosters is made up by the 4th round picks.
Right.
Not first, which should be, because you're like, first round pick. But no, that's why they're
just a lot of whiffs on those first round picks.
And that's the 2nd to the 5th round. That's where you build your offensive line. Obviously you get your stars and your Pro Bowlers in the first round. But Lane Johnson, he's a 4th overall pick. But Jason Kelsey, he's a 6th. And Sua Opeta, he's a 6th. And now he's going to play at a good team that needs him, and he's good. That's the offensive line. That 2nd to 6th round. That's a big deal.
It is amazing how it works. With all the minds and all the money going into these drafts, and then I don't know what percentage of, let's say if we said the last 25 years of drafts, how many of the first round picks made it as 5 years or 4 years or whatever. I bet you it's pretty low.
Oh yeah, very much.
It's funny. I mean, we've seen some of our first round picks in the last 10 years, maybe 15 years. Not really.
Some pretty bad. Some great, Devontae, but some terrible. Andre Dillard.
Agreed.
Let's touch on some other sports before we do a list.
Sure.
76ers, they're 36-30. They've lost 2 in a row. Not looking good, too good right now. I've heard that Embiid is aiming to come back late April before the playoffs. We're in the play-in right now at the 7th seed. We play the Hornets tonight. Let's hope they can kind of just stay above the play-in, because we really don't want to be in that. I think that'd be a bad turnout. Flyers 34-25-8. 3rd in the Eastern Metro. They play the Boston Bruins tonight, one of the best teams in the league. We'll see how that goes. The last time they played one of the best teams in the league, they killed them. It's kind of funny how it works. Is it Florida, the Panthers, or something like that? One of the best teams in the league. They killed them, and then the next game they lost 6-2, and you're like, what? I just don't get it.
Yeah.
The Union, they're 0-2. The game last week got suspended. We were trying to watch. It was raining like crazy. My gosh. And then they're playing Austin FC tonight. I believe it's 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock Eastern time. I don't really. Is it 8 o'clock Eastern time?
Probably not.
I think it's 7:30 Eastern time.
Yeah,
actually,
because you don't want to be too dark.
So they're playing there. But let's go ahead and do a little list now. We're going to talk about our worst free agent signings in Eagles history.
Okay.
Yeah, you ready?
Like yeah, I'm ready.
You want to go 5-5, 4-4, all that, or do you want to go all yours?
Take a look at my list real sure, and just to make sure I don't have any duplicates. I know we talked about it earlier, but
yeah, looks good to me.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
excellent.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Well, I got number 5. Number 5, Steve Smith. He played for the Giants. Was a huge player at the time. The year before we drafted him, he had 107 catches.
Oh wow.
Okay. So he's the only NFL player to have 100 or more passes one year and less than 15 the next.
Oh, wow.
So we got him. He had 107 catches. We said, let's get this guy. He had less than 15 catches that year.
So I'm seeing a little bit. I have a different story.
Okay.
He had 108 catches in 2009.
Okay.
48 catches in 2010 with the Giants still, and then in 11 we got him. 11 catches.
So this says it wasn't in two years, but it says only NFL player for 107 or more passes one year.
Catches,
and then have less than 15.
Okay. In his career. Okay,
in his career.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was huge disappointment when we got him. And I remember when we got him, we needed a wide receiver. We finally went out on a limb and picked him up. Devastating to the team.
Wow. You want to know something crazy?
What's that?
Steve Smith, his brother was Malcolm Smith, MVP of Super Bowl, I don't know the number, 40-something. I don't know.
Okay.
He was on the Seahawks, that middle linebacker.
Yeah.
He was the MVP, his brother. Isn't that funny?
Excellent.
That's so weird.
That is. Hey, that's the way it goes.
Smith.
Yeah, Steve Smith, we really had some high hopes for him, and he just did not deliver.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
I mean,
my number 5, I don't have the stats like you do. I should have had it.
I'm sorry. I had more time.
I know. Number 5, I got Miles Austin. Just so terrible. I think he was 2015, maybe 2016, but he had, spent most of his career with the Cowboys.
Right. He was good.
Was a Pro Bowler with them, 2009, 2010, 1,300 yards, 1,000 yards.
Wow.
11 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns. And then he was with Cleveland at the end of his career. So there wasn't too much hope for him. In Cleveland in 2014, he had 568 yards and 2 touchdowns. But with us in 11 games, he had 13 receptions for 224 yards and 1 touchdown. It's a high average of 17.2, but he had 13 catches in 11 games in 1 start. And the worst part is he was signed on as a kind of an expectation of, we've got a really young, at that time, we had a really young wide receiver core. Jordan Matthews, Josh Huff, not Bryce Huff.
I got you.
Josh Huff.
I remember.
We still had Cooper, unfortunately, then, but
right.
Kind of a younger wide receiver core that he was going to bring experience and speed to. He was awful.
Yeah.
Complete letdown and just a terrible player for us.
That is not good.
One of the main examples of don't ever sign a Cowboy. It's kind of always.
Well, I know you talk about that.
One
all
of the
time.
main examples is why you don't ever sign.
For our team, it hasn't worked out.
Yeah.
We just know
you don't ever sign a Cowboys player ever. Yep.
Okay. My number 4 is Blaine Bishop. People might not remember this, but it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. Blaine Bishop was really great player for Tennessee Titans. And then he, almost won the Super Bowl there. And, then we ended up picking him up. And he was I think we did him for a 1-year contract.
Yeah.
Just awful. Came in, it was 2002, maybe 1. Came in and he just was not, he was playing with Doc. They thought that was going to be a great side-by-side. It just didn't work out.
Yeah.
One of the big things that's attributed to him is, if you remember the NFC Championship game we lost to Tampa Bay, he gave that Joe Jaravicious 71-yard touchdown up, and it was just awful. He just couldn't cover anybody.
Yeah.
Just terrible. So,
okay.
Blaine Bishop, he's my number 4.
Next one I've got is Demetrius Bell. Demetrius Bell was a left tackle, offensive tackle, I'll say, but primarily he was supposed to be a left tackle we signed in order to take over the spot for Peters, who had gotten hurt, but kind of dumb, very dumb. We signed him at $34.5 million for over 5 years. The first year of his contract was only worth up to $3.25 million, but he only played 9 games, including 5 starts. He suffered some injuries, but he was also terrible when he played.
Yeah.
We ended up releasing him in the offseason right after and wasted a ton of money on this dude.
I think King Dunlap filled in for him.
Yeah, King Dunlap took over for him. That's how bad he was.
Yeah, I know. And we know the King. He had some issues.
King Dunlap, man. I know he ended his career pretty well with the Chargers.
He did.
He was terrible for us.
Yeah.
He replaced
was a draft
him.
Pick. Yeah, he's a draft pick for us, I believe.
6th rounder. offensive
Okay,
line.
so wasn't that high?
I think he was something
Okay.
like that. I don't know.
But
for
no,
sure.
he definitely. Bell, I remember when we got him, we thought we hit the homer, and that's the big thing about free agency. You never know what's going to happen when they come to your team.
King Dunlap, 7th-round pick.
I do remember that.
Yeah,
I know he got burned a lot, but
yeah, he was terrible for us, but he ended up his career actually doing pretty darn good.
Okay, number 3 for me is Javon Curse. He was another player, Tennessee. He was like averaging 10 sacks per year for his first 3 or 4 years, and we threw a lot of money at him. He came in to play for Philly. I think we signed him for 4 years, and he wasn't awful. But I mean, he wasn't the player that we expected.
Yeah.
In his first 2 seasons, he had 7.5 sacks total, and then the last 2 seasons we had him, he only had 3.5 sacks. He became more of a decoy than anything. It was really sad. And again, he was number one of those players that, when you sign him and you're like, oh man, he's still fairly young. I think he'd only played 4 years in the league when we got him, and he just did not deliver at all. It was just a bummer.
My number 3, I've got Byron Maxwell. We signed Byron Maxwell back in 2015 to a 6-year, $63 million contract with $25 million guaranteed.
Oh, my goodness.
He had been a part of the Legion of Boom, but he was kind of considered to be the 4th guy. This is because obviously you look back at the Legion of Boom, and there was, Brandon Bowden was pretty good, and Kerry Williams was there for a bit, but the Legion of Boom was those 3 guys, Earl, Cam, and Sherman.
Right.
It was those 3 guys. I know there was more in backups.
Right.
No, it was those 3 guys. And we signed him thinking he was that missing piece in the cornerback position. We had been terrible at corner, and he was absolutely horrible.
Yes, he was.
For us. Played in 14 games, started all 14 of them. 64 tackles, which is actually a lot of tackles, which is terrible for a cornerback.
Right.
You shouldn't have that many tackles.
Yeah.
He only had 2 interceptions. One of them was a horrible pass by Tom Brady into the end zone. In that Tom Brady in the game in 2015 when we beat them.
Gotcha.
When we were like, oh, we're going to lose.
Yeah.
And we won. He had a pick against him. I don't remember any of his other interceptions because it just.
You only had one more, right?
He had one other more, so I don't remember. It might have been against the Dolphins or something like that. I don't remember. He ended up playing 2 more years with Dolphins, and then he went back to Seattle. But he ended his career pretty quick afterwards.
Wow. All right, I got one that's going to be a pain, but number 2 is Ryan Kerrigan. You remember him?
Oh, Jesus.
Commanders/Redskins.
Don't.
He was
don't do this.
every time. He was kind of like the He just when he played against us, he just destroyed us.
Always.
So I have some stats here. 19 games versus the Eagles. He had 63 tackles, 24 quarterback hits, 13.5 sacks,
Jeez.
1 INT for a TD, and you remember that pass.
I do.
And 6 forced fumbles. So we said, let's go get him. And now he was later in his career. So we got him 1 year. He started 16. He was on the team, obviously. He started 2 games, 3 tackles.
Yeah.
And I remember just every game, come on, man, get a sack. So then he played 1 postseason game with us, had 3 tackles and 1.5 sacks.
Oh, yep. Yeah.
And so that was good.
That was weird. It was like, why? Because it was against Brady, and it was 21, right?
Yes.
So, it was against Brady and the Bucks. And he had 1.5 or 2 sacks. I hate halves. It's stupid. But
it is.
Before the halftime, he had those 2 sacks, and you were like, "Holy crap!" Finally. And then that was it.
That was it. It was a shame. I mean, again, it was I don't think we paid him a lot, anything like that. But it just when you have a player like that we took him from that other team, and he was been so dominant against us for 10 years, and then he just fell on his face.
Yeah. Number 2, I have Nnamdi Asamoah. This is one that all Eagles fans are very familiar with, usually considered one of the worst ever. We signed him to a 5-year, $60 million deal, $25 million guaranteed. Interestingly enough, he made the Pro Bowl with us as an alternate because of his name, which is kind of the problem with the Pro Bowl nowadays.
Yeah.
He got to go as an alternate, and you're like, well, okay. But, he was horrible with us the entire time. We wasted a ton of money on him. He played with us only for 2 seasons, had 4 interceptions. He was supposed to be a lockdown corner that would get us, 15 interceptions.
He was just
he was supposed to be that next guy to replace Sheldon Brown and Lito Shepherd and those guys, and it didn't happen at all. He was horrible. I think the other guy with him was Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. I think they were playing at the same time. Maybe around the same time.
I really like DRC.
DRC was great.
I really liked him.
He might. I don't know. He's not on a Hall of Fame list, but he was.
He
was pretty darn good, and he had a lot of numbers.
He was
a
big name at that time for sure.
Yeah.
So my number 1, and it wasn't a very sexy pick. I was hoping for like that big bomber one, but I looked around, and of course, you and I had 2 lists, so I didn't want to take any of yours. But I got James Casey. He's a tight end.
Oh, wow.
We signed him 3-year, $14.6 million contract in the 2010s, 12,
I love
something
Casey,
like
yeah.
that. I remember. 3-year contract.
1 touchdown.
6 catches, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns in 2 seasons.
Jeez.
So he had 3 catches per year for the time that we had him, which is about $5 million a year. So, yeah, it was a bad pick. I remember, like you did too, we really wanted him to be that guy. And that's the thing about free agency. You got to remember, gang, when you pick these players up, sometimes they don't deliver, and it just can be crushing to your team.
Yeah. Well, I remember back when we had him, we had Selleck and Ertz at the time.
Yes,
so
we did. Young Ertz.
We thought he'd be a little bit more of a weapon. He was more used as a blocker, kind of a Jack Stoll type.
Yeah.
He was definitely a better blocker than Stoll, which Stoll was. I'm not saying Stoll's not a good blocker, but Casey was, man, he would come off the edge. But yeah, a little bit too much money for a blocker.
Oh, yeah.
For an extra offensive lineman. But
what year was that? Did it say
2013 it should have been.
Yeah, see, that's a lot. $5 million a year back then.
He played with us in the playoffs against the New Orleans Saints that one year.
Okay.
So I know he was in that game. I think he was with us for 13 and 14, and then we might have traded him afterwards. Yeah, 13 and 14. Yeah, maybe not traded, but
I remember one big catch from him. And you're like, it was probably a touchdown.
I remember one touchdown, but
you're like, oh, there he is.
Yeah. Next, my number one. This one's going to be kind of obvious, but for me, DeMarco Murray. Obviously, my list is going to be more recent and more biased towards it, but I remember when we signed DeMarco Murray in 2015 and the excitement, which is kind of funny because, man, when you run a guy 392 times, which Dallas did in 2014, why would you ever sign a guy after that?
I agree.
I mean, that's a horrible decision. But
he had 1,800 yards.
1,800 yards, 4.7 average. Which, if you're getting 1,800 yards as a less than 5-yard average, you're destroying your body.
He was incredible.
Yeah, he was great that year. Didn't have a touchdown against us, I don't think.
No, we did really well against him, but then they got us back when he played against Dallas.
That's the thing, when he played against us. Yeah, so he had 1,800 yards that year and 13 touchdowns, and then he came to us. 702 yards with a 3.6 average and 6 touchdowns. He was horrible. I can't even sit here and really blame him, though, as much as I could blame Chip Kelly for it. I remember consistently, we talked about DeMarco Murray. He's an up-the-gut guy.
Right.
He was not an outside
pitch out,
toss, outside running back behind the tackle.
Yeah.
No, he was an up-the-gut guy, and we would just keep on going, oh, my gosh, why? Like, he had no speed going sideline to sideline.
He wasn't that guy. Yes.
And it bothered us. It was just horrible. And that whole season was just so bad. I touched on like 3 guys from the 2015 season.
Yeah.
They were just so awful because of we got Bradford that year, and they're like, oh, Bradford and Murray, they played in college together.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that wasn't obvious at all.
We also avoided the dream team thing, which except for Ashamoah, there's about 2 or 3 guys on that team that I wanted to stay away from that because that was
for sure.
I hate that term. Yeah. I hate anybody talking about it. So I've got an honorable mention here.
Okay.
And it's really not an honorable mention, but it's kind of going back to this whole thing of watch who you sign because sometimes that guy's not going to deliver what he's been delivered. In 2022, Javon Hargrave for us, 11 sacks, 37 tackles, 31 solo, 1 forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries. 49ers signed him to a 4-year, $84 million contract. Last year, 7 sacks, 20 solo tackles.
Wow.
0 forced fumbles, 0 forced fumble recoveries.
I thought he had a lot. I thought he had more sacks.
7 sacks. Yeah. So, that's only a big difference, but, if he just wasn't that home run hitter that you wanted to get. So be careful who you pull for in the free agency because you never know.
Yeah.
That guy could be the best player on the team and on another team and come to your team and not deliver.
I got an honorable mention for you now that I just came up with.
All right.
Vince Young.
He was on my list.
The guy who said the damn dream team.
That's right. I took him off my list.
We didn't pay him much. He didn't do anything for us, but he did frickin' put a little bit too many expectations in our lives.
Yeah, maybe in 10 years that whole moniker will disappear, but I doubt
terrible. All right, let's say our goodbyes here. We're got to get out of here. Going to the Switchbacks game tonight. All right,
home opener.
You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. If you like our Eagles Therapy podcast, do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe below and comment any free agents that you hated that we signed or any ones that you want us to continue to sign going forward. You can email us any questions at oureaglestherapy@gmail.com. But other than that, from all of us here at Our Eagles Therapy podcast, I'm Basil.
And I'm Baz.
Go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.